Hello, welcome. We should be live.
Hi. Awesome. Welcome to the Stream of Truth. I am Dr. Tassel Faith Shamebrook.
And I'm Sean Kelly.
And today we are talking about doing versus being and finding the balance between these two.
Yeah, yeah. It's a super awesome topic, and I think one that both of us have been. I don't want to use the word struggling with, but trying to expand in.
Exploring.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Like,
Yeah.
and it's been really interesting for us, and I think the reason that we wanted to talk about this was because both of us have this almost diametrically opposed natural seeming set point, or
Yes.
I shouldn't say natural, but our like our life
Programs.
experience has led us to be this sort of way, and
Yes.
we're diametrically almost opposed. And so
Yes.
it especially in the earlier parts of our like relationship, and this video isn't really going to be about relationship stuff too much, but um, I think that we bashed heads a lot with this type of thing. So hi, Jamie. Good morning. Good morning. Thanks for joining. You guys, you're always here, and I just really want to express my appreciation and gratitude for you joining
Yes.
us. You're
Thank
almost
you.
always here, and we just really appreciate it. And we're
So
sending you lots of
lovely.
love.
Yes. Nice to have people.
Totally, yeah, yeah. It's nice
Being.
to have people listen when we're talking for people, for real, for real.
Totally. Totally.
There was a part of me that always wondered, will anyone listen? And so at least one is. That's perfect.
It's awesome.
Good morning, Joe.
Um,
Good morning.
yeah, to what you just said about, especially earlier on, I seem to be more of a doer, and you seem to be more of a beer. And I wonder, for me, what it brought up was it brought up fear. Oh my gosh, he's not doing anything.
And I like just to give context, uh, I would say approximately 70 to 80% of my day, I'm just sitting. I'm just sitting around. I'm not doing really anything. Uh, so when Tassel and I got together and we're like, let's do a business, I'm like, yeah, let's do it. And then I sit. Um, so
Um,
yeah, it's
it
difficult.
really threw all my mainstream 3D ideas about running a business, just out the door because I really had to expand. It was terrifying. It was terrifying,
Yeah,
terrifying.
yeah, and
And it was probably exactly what I needed. Was my orientation terrifying for you? My busy bee do?
no, there was an ass. It wasn't scary for me.
Yeah.
It was a well, I guess no, there was an aspect of fear because what it felt like in the past was it felt like you were pushing me to do stuff,
Okay.
and so I feared that you would never stop that.
Okay.
So that fear was there, that
Yeah.
that you'd always be pushing me to do things and
Yeah.
that type of thing.
Yeah.
Even after I've sort of explained my orientation or that type of thing. So I
Mhm.
had some fear about that, I guess,
Yeah.
but not so much. More more. I just was. I think a little frustrated that we couldn't easily see each other's like positions,
Mhm. Mhm.
and like I had. It's hard for me to remember being more doer oriented. I
Yeah.
used to be an analytical like IT dude,
Yeah.
and I still am that, right? I just expanded, but I I don't. It's hard for me to reorient myself in that way. So basically, both of us are just not really understanding each other back then. So
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, and I had really never met anyone like you. Uh who was very much more of a beer than a doer. And so it's like it was just new territory for me.
Yeah.
And maybe shall we back up and just talk from a more general perspective
Totally.
of
Totally.
why we think it's important to even be curious or aware of one's own orientations around being and doing? Why do we care
Yeah.
about this?
Yeah. What does it matter?
What does it
Um,
matter?
I think so. I think what we're primarily talking about today, and the primary, I guess, motivation to do the video or to do this topic is there are shadow aspects, sort of, to both extremes of this orientation. So,
Yes.
um, somebody that's too rigid in being, like very rigid in being, will and this is what I do or have been doing, and I'm trying to loosen myself a bit,
Yeah.
uh, will sometimes reject the doing, even if it's an inspired activity. So inspired
Mhm.
action will still be seen, oh, well, I'm not a doer, or, and therefore no action ends up being taken. Um, and, you're not, that's appropriate for some people. Some people are meant to literally just sit and uh, explore themselves,
Yeah.
right? So that, but I would say that those are the, you know, I think you might call it an ascetic lifestyle,
Mhm.
isolated, no real
Yes.
possessions.
Yes.
That is for some people, um,
Yeah.
but it's, I would say, for the vast minority of people at right now, um, and so if you're not, if that doesn't resonate to go be that person, then there's gonna be some level of doing that and being in the physical material world and accomplishing sort of things, right? um and it can be difficult if you're too present and too being to sometimes allow yourself to do those things. And basically on the other side of it, um being really attached to doing and all of the material or physical reality adjustments and all that, can be stressful on the person, right? Because they put all this pressure on themselves. If they're not doing, then they're being lazy, or they're losing. They could also be like a FOMO, or like fear of missing out on opportunity, because they're not doing enough and all that type of thing. So both are stressful in their own way, and that's why I think it's important to talk about it. And then also, I think both of us highlight this awesome spectrum of not only that people can be very, very different, but also that we can still come together in harmony despite these very different orientations as well. So, um, I think
Yeah.
I think that's primarily what we're trying to talk about here, and um,
And
yeah,
there's so many interesting aspects to this. One of the things I was thinking of is that Western culture in general seems to be very much at the extreme of doing. Um, and other cultures are on other, marks of that spectrum.
yeah,
So I think it's really interesting, first of all, to be more of a beer in a very doer culture.
hmm
And I think that takes a lot of sort of personal strength and alignment to remain more of a beer when there's so many invitations constantly in our society to do.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
I agree. I agree. But I don't also don't want to shame anyone that is more oriented to the doing, or make it seem like that orientation's better, or
yes,
it's more
yes, we're
about finding what
more about
is.
the balance of it.
I think
And
each of us are, yeah, uniquely balanced, and so it's about finding our balance.
yes. And I think what's super interesting is that whatever way your life is structured is a clue to perhaps your more primary orientation. So for me, I'm a single mom. I have quite a lot of custody of my kids. I have a home, a business. So my structure would invite a lot of doing,
Hmm.
because there's no other way to sort of keep it running. So I think in general, I came into this incarnation to do a lot. That's what my soul wanted for my experience here, my expansion.
Hmm.
And some of my expansion, though, is within all the obligations and responsibilities, is to be as well, and then also to be while I'm doing.
That's I think the goal. And
And what I mean by that is being present in whatever I am doing,
mhm.
so that I am being as I'm doing.
Yep. Yep. And I'll share like a little esoteric. This probably won't resonate with everybody. It can be hard to notice this, but none of us actually are doing anything. Uh, we're what we're doing is allowing the universe to flow through us,
Yeah.
um, and or trying to impede the flow. That's generally what we're either allowing it or resisting it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so our acts of doing are really the ego going, I did that, I did that, I did that, I'm gonna do that, and that is an illusion. Um, it's and so the ego will also then say, if you don't identify as the doer, then you won't do, and you won't provide, and you won't be successful, or you won't whatever, which is just not how it works. That's not because the urge or inspired action to flow and do a thing doesn't form from the rational mind. The rational
And the ego.
mind,
Yeah.
right? The rational mind tries to explain and identify the inspired action. So the inspired action will come without any of that rationality. So you'll still do all the stuff you're meant to do. You have to just let go of all the pointing and the
It, it
commentary.
it's almost like it seems like the aligned path is based in being. I'm I'm present, I'm listening, waiting for the particular nudges or inspired action to come through. And then I'm doing once the inspiration has come.
Mhm.
The the way it feels like most of us were brought up in our society was not that at all. Wasn't
Yeah,
It was, you listen to what I'm telling you to do and then do it.
yeah, yeah.
So I guess I like just like that idea that I can be, I'm present, I'm in the moment, I'm breathing. Oh, now here's a nudge. This is life wanting to flow through me. This is spirit wanting to experience itself through me. Okay, now I'm doing.
Yeah,
And then
yeah,
I'm going to go back to being.
yeah. But I would like to say that even in the doing, really, you,
I'm being as well.
you're still just being. What you're just allowing yourself to be, and
Yes.
and so the do or not do question or choice is not truly your choice. Really, your choice is your intention around what you'd like to have come about. Um, so you're how do I say it? So like, for example, if you believe that you need to provide for your children,
Yeah.
then you will have inspired action arise to support that belief. It will
Yes.
occur that way. It's the law of attraction.
Yes.
So you don't need and when those things arise and you just flow with it, you'll see that the state that you're in doesn't ever really change The only thing that changes is the commentary of the rational mind saying, look what I'm doing. um
And I feel what you said is really helpful, that in our society it feels like we might feel like frantic doers. Oh, I want to provide for my family. I want to make money, so I need to do.
yeah,
But what I think we're talking about here is we take a step back and we have our intentions, we have our visions, we have our focus of what we want to create in our reality. We start there. We start energetically. We
yeah,
don't start in the material world. We start energetically. This is my intention. This is the energy I'm holding. I'm feeling into my abundance and providing for my family. I start there,
yeah,
and I'm being that. I'm being that energy. I'm being that energy.
hmm,
And then the synchronicities come in, the inspired action comes in, the right people come in, and we just flow with the doing.
yeah,
We start energetically.
yep, yeah. The way that I like to think of it too is that the inspired action can come from anywhere, right? It doesn't have to be an urge that comes from within. It can be your son or daughter or whatever approaching you, asking you to go to McDonald's, right?
Oh yeah,
So,
absolutely. Right,
so
right.
the universe merely offers to you suggestions constantly. Here's a
Yes.
suggestion. Here's a suggestion.
Yes.
And then
Yes.
all we're really doing is trying to go, is this suggestion something that I would like to be aligned with and embrace and then allow to flow? Or is this suggestion something that I don't want to allow to flow? And if I don't want it to allow to flow, I should probably review why I'm resisting the suggestion of the universe. Um, because there's always a lesson there in any resistance. So it's not that the resistance is bad. Like it's the resistance is always based on some sort of anxiety, and that's exactly why everyone also feels all this need to do all these things, is because they have all the anxious stories around if they don't, then they'll be all sorts of disaster. So
Yes. And I think a great way to ask yourself, am I in alignment with what I'm doing right now, is, am I doing something from a place of fear, or am I doing something more from a place of love and excitement and faith,
right,
with all of our actions?
yeah,
And the way I seem to be just operating now is I just seem to trust whatever is coming in to me
mm-hmm,
as invitations. I'm not in a way deciding what to do. I just, oh, this opportunity is coming in and I'm flowing with it. And I have set my intentions as well.
yeah.
Um, so that it seems like I set the intentions, and then opportunities come to me based on the match with my intentions.
Yeah, yeah. I think what ends up happening is as we begin or expand on our like intuition and touching into it and our heart and what truly resonates versus the stories that we have, when we
Yeah.
start to do all that, it becomes very obvious to us that the intuitive knowings are so much more real than the ideas that cause us to act from fear. Like like um that 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 like those ideas can be helpful for us to frame what we want to have in our lives or what we prefer versus what we do not prefer. That's one of the reasons those things exist, is so that we can
Yeah.
make sort of discretionary decisions on what is aligned with us and what isn't. Um, and and I think that as we move into more of the intuitive stuff, we start to like, for example, you are a big doer, but I do think that you are primarily being and following your intuition. you're not so much acting out of fear. If you were, you would have a lot more conflict with me, because I would be able to see that happening just as you'd see if I was acting out of fear, and we would go, hey, you're being weird, to each other, right? We would let each other know and help correct. So
Yeah.
I think you're actually being and following that probably more than you would think, because you're such a doer, if that makes sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah. There's a lot of different layers
There's
here.
so many layers. It's a
So many
big
different
thing. It's
layers.
complicated, and
I think, just to back it up again, what we're saying is ideally we be we be first. We be first. We be
yeah,
in our authenticity, our authentic self, our own dreams, our own intentions. We start there. We always start there.
yeah,
What do I want in my life? From all what you said, from all my life experiences, from all the contrasts, from what I see, this resonates, this doesn't resonate. So we be first.
yep,
Be first. And then the inspired action, it could come from other people, it could come from within. With through the inspired actions, that is when we do.
hmm
And then once we're doing, some of us are just really love doing.
yeah,
And I'm one of those people. I love to do. I don't know why. I like to see the effects of my actions in the material world. And it's funny, like even cleaning, I really enjoy. I like to see the effect of what I do and see what happens. I gain a lot of fulfillment from that.
hmm
So I love to do. Sometimes it's hard for me to sleep because I want to get up and do. I enjoy doing.
it's
It's
it,
fun for me.
it's funny because sometimes, like the last 3 days, it's hard for me to sleep because I'm like in some sort of like trance dream world in my mind, and I'm exploring my consciousness, and that is so exciting to me that I'll I'll not want to sleep, or I just don't seem to sleep. So
Yeah.
it's like the same thing, um, but just totally opposite. Like I'll just sort of sit there awake for hours. Um, but anyway, yeah. So Joe asked a really good question that I'd like to
Yeah.
try to help him with, and it's an interesting one. And I'll be curious to hear your perspective on it too, considering me and my orientation. But
Yeah.
if you get a chance, could you help me by applying this to quitting smoking?
Ah, and this is something
So I
that you're considering too.
so I
Wait,
smoke.
so okay.
I
Yeah.
should say that I smoke. I smoke marijuana and I smoke tobacco. Um, and I smoke. I like so I guess I'll just say that I don't smoke marijuana every day. Um, I I just do it on occasion, and then I also but I do smoke tobacco basically all day. And so I've also been wondering about this, and so my advice, my advice for trying to quit smoking is first examining why you smoke, in the first place, in an honest way. There will be aspects that you enjoy of it, right? Like there will be parts of it that you enjoy. It's not generally it's not just because it's physically addictive. Like that's part of it and definitely has a whole effect on trying to quit and all these things, but primarily people tend to smoke because they like that sort of break. Um or it helps them relax or whatever, right? For me, I actually think of this of smoking as magical manifestation practice, and I will set an intention, take the smoke into my lungs, and then expel it. And so what I'm doing is combining air, fire, water, and earth to to form a physical manifested cloud of my intention into the universe. And so, is that bad? I mean, should I stop doing that because a doctor said it's not good for me? Or maybe what is good for me is decided by my consciousness and my orientation around my beliefs. And this is why, for example, somebody could be 100 years old and have smoked their whole life and never had a complication, and other people get sick. The narrative is that smoking causes cancer, which is not true. Anger causes cancer. Smokers tend to be ones who struggle with anger, in my experience. So you could, like, a carcinogen is merely a statistic to represent that people exposed to this statistically have encountered cancer later. It's not, they don't know, science doesn't know where it comes from. They're trying to point at things because they don't know. So it's from anger. At almost every single human will develop cancer if they live long enough, due to the anger that will eventually start to distort some of their cells. So if I'm not saying that it's good for you either. I really, what I'm saying is, I don't know if it's good or bad or what. I'm not convinced that just because everyone says it's bad, that it's bad. That to me is just insane to believe that way. That's just my orientation. And I know that it's like a very obscure, sort of rare one to have. But so I'll say that I still smoke. I enjoy a large part of it. Most of the pressures that I have to quit aren't my own. They're not from me. Like, they're fear from sort of the medical community. Their fear, and then there's unacceptance of the smoker by people who don't smoke. Which is basically judgment. It's not often coming from me. However, there are aspects of smoking that I notice that do bother me. So those are the reasons. Like, so I'll have an irritation in my throat, or it's expensive as well. So these are some of the material things that come about. I don't know how to apply the being and doing considerations to this particular thing. I sort of see it as like, I see this as sort of the same as any other choice. But the being, so like if you did choose to quit, part of the struggle would be to observe your addiction working its magic upon your body as you stop. There's a lot of mastery, self-mastery that can come from that activity. And this is why recovering addicts often become quite enlightened, quite awakened from their own addiction recovery. And this is why addiction tends to exist. One of the reasons is for humans to learn mastery of the body. So smoking is a tool. And if the tool is hurting you and you don't like it, then you choose to discard it and accept whatever comes from that choice. But if the tool is helping you and you don't want to let it go, why don't you want to let it go? Examine these things. Because what you're trying to figure out is why you're attached to it in the first place, not the physical addiction part, but why do I actually want to keep doing it? And if it is just the physical addiction, then you have an opportunity for expansion to just let it go. And of course, there are cessation things that help, but the more expanding way would be to just do it cold turkey and feel all that. I don't know. This is a very difficult topic because society is so polarized about it. So it's similar to talking about something like abortion or
Yes.
something
Yes.
like that. It's obviously not the same thing, but it's very similar. And people have people have lost people to cancer, and were
Yes.
told that it was due to their smoking and things like that. So there's
Yep.
lots and lots of distortion around it and polarity. So
Yes.
really, I think I think that it's really just about tuning into what you really want, trying to ignore the
Yes.
external pressures. What do you think about it,
Yeah.
Doctor T?
Yeah. So, yeah, to your point about smoking and its physical effects and what's sort of out there in the media and the science world, I would say, and I think this is what you just said, is run everything through your own guidance system. I get this message all the time from my guidance: tune out all the external noise, tune it out. Doesn't exist. What does my own body say about smoking? What does my body say about smoking?
Mm-hmm.
So when I am smoking, or I think about smoking, what do I feel? What's coming up for me? Let your own body be the guide for smoking, not smoking.
Yeah.
Um, and then secondly, you spoke to this a bit too. When we smoke, we we're most likely we're experiencing being. When we're smoking, we're being.
Mm-hmm.
We're not doing. Well, we're smoking, but in general, we're relaxing, we're taking a break. And I think it's super interesting. It's not very culturally sanctioned to be in our
That's
society.
what I was gonna
So
say too.
so
It's
then
yeah.
so then what does the human do? The human tries to find way to be. And smoking, although it's not really super culturally sanctioned, it's more sanctioned than doing nothing in a way, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like
It's an
someone
excuse.
just, yeah, like someone
Yeah.
just sitting and being in the middle of a work day, that's not really accepted.
Yeah.
But smoking is actually a bit more accepted than just sitting.
It's funny you say that, because like there's a lot of people that will, like, when I used to work, like we were supposed to have certain breaks or whatever. I worked in an office, it was salary, so it's like not a huge deal, but I would end up going out for smokes, every hour or something. And the other people that worked with me were like, this is not fair. He gets to have all these breaks because he smokes. And I was like, well,
Right.
then start smoking. I mean, I don't care, but I can't just go out
Right.
there and stand there, because then I'll look like a jackass.
Well,
But
yeah,
if I
that's
smoke, I have an addiction. I have a
right. I have
disease.
an excuse to just
Yeah,
take a break and
and
be.
because it's an addiction, and addiction is viewed as a disease, they're not gonna judge me on it or comment on it. They're just gonna let me go do my thing because
Yes.
society tells them that that's
It's
you know.
socially acceptable to some degree to smoke.
But most people sit
Rather than
there
just to sit.
quietly. Yeah, most people
If
sit
you're
there
just sitting,
upset.
you that's weird. So, and I'll share that my addiction, I would say, is food. I don't smoke, but
Mm-hmm.
I will eat sometimes when I'm feeling something uncomfortable. But I also think I eat so I have a chance to just be. I
Have a
think that's
break.
a large reason why I eat and snack, because I just want to take a break. And in the orientation of me being a doer, it feels uncomfortable to not be doing something. There's something about eating that's active, and I'm more comfortable with that. So I think partly I overeat at times because I just want to be.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
And I just think it's so interesting that we're just not really taught in a way how to be, or taught that it's okay or that it's valuable, that it's part of the natural flow of our human system to be
And
at
this is
times.
this is why when people hear like about my lifestyle and what I do, uh, lots of people just sort of laugh because they don't like they can't really wrap their mind around how that somebody does that, right? Like how they
Yes.
just sit around. Like, don't you
Yes.
feel like a lazy piece of garbage? Nope,
Yes.
no, I don't. and
Yes.
and so that's important. But also, I wanted to say that a huge part of human experience is the sort of observation of our vices and
Hmm.
understanding where they've formed from, why we engage in them, whether they're healthy for us or not healthy. Because
Yeah.
a vice, could be jogging or something, right?
Yeah.
And
Something you do
jogging
to
is
an
a fairly
extreme.
healthy
Yeah.
thing, but if you jog too
Right.
much, you're going to blow out your knees. So like, there's balance to all things, of course, but any vice, anything you feel like I have to do any this, that is a vice, more or less. It's an attachment. It's
Well,
an
and yeah, and in our culture, it seems there's like so many examples of extreme doing behavior.
yeah.
Uh, work, quote unquote, workaholics,
Hmm.
or yeah, people who just exercise so much, or people who clean all the time. It seems for many of us, if we're going to err, we err on this side of doing, and I think that's so much because of the performance um, cultural aspect that we live in. That
Yeah.
you to be of value, you must do something.
Yeah,
You
it
must do
feels
something.
safer. It feels safer, I think,
Yeah,
generally.
yeah.
But yeah, when we let go of all that, you don't need any of that to feel safe, and then you don't worry about it. So
It's almost like it's almost in a way a little bit of the opposite is that um and this is my own shadow aspect. I do like to do, I think in part because it makes me feel safer. But what truly brings me safety and security and faith is when I be and I connect in with spirit, and I can feel spirit's presence, and I feel the nudges. That is truly how I feel safe. So it's almost the opposite of the doing.
yeah.
The inspired doing, yes, but the frantic, chaotic, pervasive, constant doing, no.
Yeah, doing from fear will feel constricting in some way, and doing from peace or from love will feel expanding usually, right? So,
Yes. And the way
yeah,
that I think we can balance the being and the doing is, again, what we always say, coming back to ourselves, tuning in internally. What is my internal guidance directing me to do in this next now moment? It might be to rest. It might be to do something. It might be, who knows? But it's that constant just tuning in to the nudge, to the guidance to direct us. And I'll say for myself, I often override my own guidance to rest out of
yeah.
fear,
I've noticed. I've
out of
noticed. Yeah,
fear.
and I think
Yeah.
even for me, I tried to mirror that a bit, uh, without being pushy, but like I was like, "There's no way that like when you
Like
had COVID."
when we had COVID.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, we had COVID together, and I just was like, "I will not leave the bedroom. I'm just gonna lay in the bed because that's what's best for me right now, I think." and
Yeah.
and then you were like doing that a bit when your body was basically shutting down, like,
When I sort of had no choice.
yeah,
Yeah.
when your body like when you were feverish. And I actually think, and I don't know anything, but I think that perhaps the fever was sort of manifested to force you to rest, right? Because
And I'll say that when I am sick, so sick that like I really can't get up, it can be so uncomfortable for me.
yeah,
So like it sounds dramatic, but almost it can feel almost like a life and death thing.
it's like torturous.
Like I'm gonna, and I think this must be connected to some ancestral energy in my line
Mm-hmm.
of probably a lot of traumatic events.
Mm-hmm.
But just not, I think in my line, we're not comfortable resting. My mom growing up, I don't know if I ever saw her sit down and relax.
Yeah,
I don't think I ever saw that. So that was also my model.
yeah.
Almost be a shark.
It's the same with my parents. my parents, they don't relax that much either. Even now, when they're my mom retired, she decided to go back to work. My
Yeah.
dad still works. Um, they do relax, but they spend a lot of my mom especially is just always doing stuff. It seems,
Yes.
and you know it. So the reason I say that is because somehow, and I know how for me, I didn't absorb that orientation. I absorbed it early on and then was
Yeah.
like, that's not for me. And I let that go. But it took me until I was about 33 when I let that go.
So
Uh,
it was with your awakening that you stopped being so much of a doer? Is that in
yeah.
that line?
And so in 2012, I, I started to meditate.
Yeah.
Like in 2012 was my first like beginning of the awakening. Yeah. I think we're always awakening, right?
Yes.
So,
Sure.
but the first like pointed like part where I could say yes, this was a major shift was I saw the ego and noticed that I'm the observer of it,
Yes.
and then I was like, that just messed with me a lot.
Yeah.
Uh, but I just kept meditating and stuff and observing myself, and so I ended up learning of more of what's bringing up these um, inclinations to do so much.
Yeah.
Later, after at my awakening was a very spontaneous Kundalini awakening that I've talked about. It was very explosive and sort of just purified me. There's
Yeah.
also we also have talked about how I had a walk-in experience
Yeah.
and had sort of a new entity just sort of arise
Yeah.
in me.
Yeah.
And so suddenly I was not that way. So it was very very difficult for me
Yeah.
because I went through a dark night of the soul, which is typical because the
Yeah.
stories aren't gone, but the identities fall away,
Yeah.
a lot of them. So then you have all this issue, but the reason for that is because like I've spent so many lives being an old man alone in a cave for his whole life, a monk, or these types
Yeah.
of practices. Or a prophet or magician.
Mhm.
I've often been in those types of roles as in my incarnations, and so my natural orientation is to sit. Also, because I come from sixth density, uh, when we traverse fifth density, most of us in fifth density. So you could imagine fourth density is all of us like come together as one.
Mhm.
And then in fifth density, we recognize we're all one, and then we opt to separate and do almost everything in pure isolation, um, as one. It's an odd thing to think about, but
Mhm.
we end up doing not engaging with people at all, with each other, and you wouldn't even call them people, but um, and then in sixth density, it's unity, and there's no difference between doing, not doing, whatever, right? So there's none of that happening. So once I had my vibration come in, then all of a sudden all this doing just didn't make sense to me anymore.
Yeah,
Um,
so interesting. You
but
brought in the sixth density orientation of being to
yeah,
your
yeah, yeah,
3D physical body.
yeah, and
Um,
then you start to try to embody it because it
yeah,
feels better. It feels more right for you,
yeah,
and
yeah,
then there's so many people telling you that you're nuts because the way
yes,
you're being is not understandable by a human or even a soul that hasn't yet traversed fourth, fifth, or sixth
yeah,
density. So a
yes,
younger soul will have no concept of what you're talking about or doing. So
yeah,
the only ones who are going to even understand you are other wanderers of similar vibration.
yeah. I think it's so interesting too how in our Western society we've institutionalized doing to certain times of the day
Yeah.
and times of the week as well. Uh, so we grow up going to school, usually Monday through Friday, say 8 to 3. And then most jobs, I mean, it's a little bit, as we go more virtual, it can be a little bit more flexible, but at least to start, most jobs are 9 to 5 jobs, Monday through Friday, sort of in general.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting. I find that if it is Monday through Friday during the work hours, the programming is still really strong in my being that
Yeah.
I should be doing during those times.
Yeah.
And it's been interesting because with my custody situation, often my kids are at their dad's for a large part of the weekend. So the weekend can tend to be more a space where I might be able to do a little more work because I'm not taking care of them. So that some of that has helped me loosen up the programming about when I'm supposed to be doing.
Mhm.
And I think it's really fun to play with that. Like, oh, it's Monday morning. My guidance is maybe to be. And could I do that on a
Yeah.
Monday morning from all that programming?
Also, I'd say even aside of the programming, there is an energy of working that is happening in those times in your area,
Oh yeah,
in
the
your country.
collective,
Right.
absolutely. You can
Yeah. You
feel
feel
that
it.
often many of us can feel the collective energy. The energy feels super different on Monday morning versus Friday night.
And someone like you who's very sensitive to the environmental energy, like
Yes.
I'm not. I don't notice. I don't as much. I notice days like Christmas and Halloween and stuff, but
Yeah.
uh
Yeah,
I
some of
I
us
don't notice as
really
much.
really notice it. And
Yeah.
Friday night often is a night where will tend to work a lot because I don't have my kids. So I think really if we summarize what we're talking about in this whole episode, being, doing, and the balance, as in every aspect of one's life, it is all about you and your internal experience and your internal guidance. That is where you will find the balance.
Yes, yes, yes.
And the balance is most likely very unique for each one of us. My
Yes.
perfect balance might be a bit more of doing. Yours might be more being.
Yep.
And it's great to just honor and validate that for all of us, that someone who's being more
Yep.
isn't lazy or isn't doing something wrong. We're all here to embody different orientations of that.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
over and over and over we say, go within and trust yourself, trust your own guidance, and
Yep.
that is where you will find the balance.
Don't look at the monk or even look at me as I
Don't
talk
look
about
at
just
anyone
being.
else.
Don't bother. Like, I mean, observe it and be curious about it and all that, but their orientation is theirs, and it's I'm sure perfect for them, but yours is yours, and so uh, to find peace with it all,
Yes.
you have to you'll end up wiggling around to find your own balance. And one of the ways that you can kind of point and understand some of your balance is like you'll so for example, for myself, I'll just use myself as an example. I'm very lazy. Like physically, I don't have a lot of energy. Physical energy. I have lots of mental cognitive energy, lots of
Yeah.
emotional energy and spiritual energy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very low, very, very low physical energy. I'm not interested in moving around. I had to carry a chair up to do the stream, and I was like, this is hell. This is hell. I have to move around carrying things. It's hell. And so you'll start to feel that. And so I instead of judging myself and be like, oh my god, I'm weak and I have it's not like that. This is just my this is how I am.
Yes.
And
Self-acceptance.
yes, yes. And I don't like doing a bunch of physical shit. I just don't
Yes.
like it.
Yes.
It makes me I'm tired almost all the time, physically
Yeah.
tired.
Yeah.
So that could
And
be a really good indication.
we're constantly bombarded by the ideal avatar of the human. and there's probably some variations of it, but it seems, at least in Western society, the ideal human has tons of energy, is a go-getter, performs, achieves, uh, you know, uh, multitasks. These are all considered sort of ideal attributes.
Yep.
And so much of this spiritual path in all of our incarnations is this blanket of self-acceptance, and blanket of acceptance of everyone else too.
Yeah.
And the truth is, we are all so different and unique, and we're not going to fit into these little boxes that society is asking us to fit into. So it's self-acceptance, self-love, self-trust, and just tuning out the noise, tuning out the external noise.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sovereignty. It's
Yeah.
not. It's sovereignty. It always comes back to sovereignty.
I'd also like to say that as you become an adept, and so this is something.
And what do you mean by the word adept?
So I call myself a wizard, right? The reason that I do that is because I'm in adepthood in magical practice. Everything that everyone does is magic. The only difference between an adept and somebody who, a muggle, or, a muggle is just a human that doesn't know that they're involved in magic right now, right?
Right. Right.
The next stage with that would be initiate. This is somebody who is beginning to be aware that everything's magic, and beginning to see some of the barriers that they've formed in themselves, and noticing that some of these barriers need to be removed, etc. The adept is one who is looking to find a mastery of self, and a mastery of their personal magic, a mastery of their purpose. An adept is somebody who, in magical terms, they might say something like, they have crossed the abyss, met the master, and received the word. Mm-hmm. These are all very veiled statements. The master is yourself, and you are receiving the word from your true self to then form your reality. So the adept is basically like a practiced magician that
Mm-hmm.
that ends up being able to manipulate even the cosmological or galactic energies that come in. They can adjust their own biorhythms, do things like adjust their heart rate, breathing. Some of the magicians that you actually see that are doing illusions, but are actually doing like stunts, like living in a box for 20 days, or
Mm-hmm.
those are essentially people that, whether they're aware or not, are working on their adepthood.
Yeah.
And so the reason I say all that is just to say that if I say that I'm lazy and I don't have a lot of physical energy,
Mm-hmm.
that's because I've programmed this for me because it's appropriate for now,
Mm-hmm.
and I am able to change it. I don't have just because that's my default orientation or my natural. When we crystallize and move into adepthood, we begin to choose how
Mm-hmm.
we will experience, and so we're not reined in or limited by any of these defaults or orientations that feel more natural. Just because it feels natural doesn't mean you may not want to change it. And what I'm saying is that you can change it. There are no limitations. However, doing that is a lifelong practice.
Yes.
And
so we're saying self-acceptance now, with the understanding that as creator beings, we do have anything that is in our highest and best, that all these shifts are infinite possibilities.
So when it is deemed appropriate, when I deem it appropriate, I will infuse physical energy. and use it. And
Yeah.
I do that consciously. So
Mm-hmm.
it's different from other people who are unconsciously manifesting the energy to do what they need to do. Um, I still do that too, but a lot of what I'm doing is presence and consciousness around specifically what I'm trying to put into my body. This is why sometimes if me and you get into like little conflicts and I get upset,
Mm-hmm.
I'll end up getting headaches or
Yeah.
sick or
Yeah.
like diarrhea or something,
Mm-hmm.
because I start to attack myself with my energy.
Uh, yeah.
So these things are very advanced, I would say. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that advance doesn't even really mean anything either. It's all perfect, whatever way anyone wishes to go. It's just some are called to get right into the nitty gritty of their consciousness and how that affects their physical manifestation or the manifestations in their mind and spirit, or others are meant not so much to do that. So if what I'm talking about really intrigues you, then I recommend go doing some studying, look at some of the Order of the Golden Dawn stuff, maybe look at Druidry, whatever resonates. I like Druidry because it's all about the earth,
Mm-hmm.
and I think in this incarnation, I'm meant to find a real attachment to the earth.
Mm.
So that's why I also think I have a lot of Celtic ancestry, so I was a little biased naturally.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, so that's a little bit off topic, but it's not really, because it's all anything you're doing or choosing or however you
Yeah.
is all in a frame of being and doing, right?
Yes. Yes. And maybe one of the last points I feel nudged to share is that when we are listening to that internal guidance for that balance of being and doing, we're going to feel more peace. We're
Yeah.
going to be more at ease in our lives. If we're overdoing it in one way or the other, we're going to probably feel a bit of a conflict internally.
Yeah.
We're going to feel a conflict internally whenever we're not really aligned.
Yeah.
So, um, I know that I have room to grow in sort of being more, and I think I will feel more and more internal peace as I'm able to expand
and
into being
and I
more.
have more growing to do in my resistance to doing. So,
Yeah.
I can confuse myself and basically, if I have an inclination to go do something, I'll then go, oh, no, 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 just be om. And I, in that moment, I think that feels aligned to me in the moment.
Yeah. Feels
But
familiar
upon
at the very
upon introspection and reflection,
yeah.
I have questions about whether or not that was really the right way to go. One thing I want to say for sure is that try to make your decisions on how you're adjusting your consciousness and your beliefs from a place of peace. So
Yes.
when you're
Yes.
in the fear and triggered states, that is
Yeah.
not the time to decide anything. In my
Yes.
experience, I highly recommend this
Yes.
approach, because you're in an illusion, like literally in darkness and shadow. You
Yes.
cannot see.
Yes.
So how are you going to pick the tool, or you don't know what's happening? You're lost in that
Yeah.
moment. So wait until you found yourself again, and then, like, object or not objectively, but from a sort of detached way, just observe these various characteristics that you
Yes.
observe in yourself, and
Yeah.
try to understand which things you may seek to change. You're not changing them because you need to change them. You're changing them from a place of peace that just sort of knows that this will also be peaceful and perhaps may have other benefits that I'll experience. So
Yeah.
so you're never like going, oh, I shouldn't be that way. You're just saying, well, this way would be really cool, and just let's go
Yeah.
that way. It's not about what was done in the past.
Yeah. And sometimes you will find yourself in a relationship with someone really close to you where all this is getting triggered and getting brought up so that you can see it more, as you and I have experienced. Um And there's never anything you have to do. Just if there's an uncomfortable feeling coming up, just go into it and see where that's going to lead you. That's always the easiest path.
Yeah.
Is just something's coming up. I'm going to go into it. I'm going to experience it. I'm going to feel the insight, and then I'm going to wait for the next one. And that, just that practice alone is always bringing us forward in our ascension and our development.
Yep. Yep. Somebody asked, how old are you guys? So I'm 35 or something. 30. How old am I? You know?
You're 35.
Yeah. Yes. I'm 35. Sorry, I forget how old I am all the time. And Tassel is 53.
And I'm 53. Yeah.
I know she doesn't look it at all. And we're actually probably gonna. I think you're gonna put a course out on that.
I'm gonna put a course out on.
So stay tuned.
Yeah.
What did you call it? The Fountain of Youth, or what are you thinking it might be called?
I've run a workshop called The Fountain of Youth. But the term I like better is just living in your best feeling body at any age.
Yeah, I think that's a sort of better way to look at it. I think it. Yeah. I like that. That. But yeah, so that's how old we are. I want to say too, just because you asked, the human's physical age is more or less irrelevant after around 30. We have this whole idea in our society that because somebody's older, they are wiser in some way, which is just nuts. It's not true. It gets us
into a lot of trouble.
Yeah, everybody is infinitely wise. So the age of the person really, is irrelevant. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't ask. I felt like I wanted to say that because part of me just likes to be weird, I think. And like you'll see people that are like 20 but are just like wide awake and very wise, like way beyond their years. And then the other thing is too, you'll see 80-year-olds or something that have just been totally unconscious their whole life, not really learning all that much. In as far as consciousness, and they're still basically dumb. Like they're not dumb. They're what's the word? They're immature. Immature would be a better word. So your age does not reflect.
All these stories attached to the ages. Which is a whole nother show. I think that'd be a really interesting.
All humans could be perceived as children, in many ways. We all sort of have no idea what we're doing. We're all in these lessons and learnings, and we're all sort of just wanting to play. So, so I know that's not important, but I just like to say that because, when people start talking about age, I get a little bit.
Yeah, it's another ego identification. All right, I think that's a wrap. Yeah,
I know we didn't really have like steps or anything. I think what we were trying to illustrate is sort of the idea of non-doership versus materialism, and how do you do the things and accomplish the things you want to accomplish while being versus feeling so pulled to do. And we just we're both, I think, working through all of this ourselves, and we like to talk about things that are things that we are currently in the midst of, because those tend to be the most interesting. The most information tends to come through when we're doing that. So,
and again, I'll just end with, to find your balance, tune out the external noise, the external programming, the external stories, go within and just follow how your guidance is directing you. I mean, that's always the way.
See, we're probably going to say that at some point in almost every single video we do. But yeah, that's good.
1 billion times follow your own darn guidance.
Yeah.
All right.
I think that's it. I thank you everybody for coming.
Thank you so much.
And I think it's awesome that you guys are here and chatting and stuff. I am reading it. Some of the stuff we don't bring up in the stream, but we are always reading it, and we really appreciate all all the
Yes.
community starting to form and everything like that.
Yes.
So we just
Amazing.
we appreciate it. So
And
th-
thank you to anyone who's listening in the recorded version. Grateful for everybody's presence.
yeah, thank you. Oh, thanks, Joe. Thanks. He said it was he said mahalo, fantastic shoes, but he meant show. It
Oh,
was a typo.
cool. Thank you so much, Joe.
Thank you,
So
Joe.
much love
Really
to
appreciate it.
everybody. Thank you.
All right.
Okay.
Sending love, guys. Praise his name.